Howdy guys, April is over and it's time for my April wrap-up. I vaguely recall doing my March wrap-up and it being pretty repetitive with every other month that I've done so far. I've read, I think, 3 books and saying that my aim for April was to read 4. Then I sort of made a joke at the end that maybe I'd even read 5, but don't be ridiculous. But I blooming well went and did it. Check out these bad boys. 5 blooming books. Not a huge surprise because I did go on holiday in April and had 2 weeks off work, so I was able to get a lot of reading done, particularly when I was away. But equally, I was able to continue that when I came back. I realised how much I enjoyed it, so when I came back from holiday, I would spend a lot of my evenings reading rather than playing on the Xbox or something like that. The first book that I read this month was Ravensgate by Anthony Horowitz. I'd seen this one on Jacob Tanner's channel somewhere and decided to give it a whirl. So the basic story is about a kid called Matt who is involved in all sorts of badness, and he gets sent away to live somewhere with this creepy lady, and gradually he realises lots of creepy things are going on and things are very weird and spooky and weird and creepy. It's basically a story of him discovering that and what is going on in this weird village and with this weird lady that he's living with. I gave this 3 stars on Goodreads. I enjoyed it, it was okay, it was a nice quick read, but it didn't set my world on fire, to be honest. I particularly liked the start of the story. I felt very sympathetic towards the main character. I was also pleased because when I first saw an Anthony Horowitz book, I assumed it would be aimed at children, but actually there was a lot of violence, a lot scarier than I expected. It was definitely aimed at an older audience than what I had in mind, so that was a pleasant surprise. I was also really excited because it was set in York. I used to blooming well live near there, so there were a lot of place names and things that I knew that added an extra dimension to it, and I do enjoy that when you are able to relate a bit more to the setting. It does add something. One of the things that I was slightly disappointed by was that I got really into the start and then it kind of felt like it was 2 different stories in one. The sort of start set it up to be this sort of troubled boy and how he was going to cope with life, but actually it wasn't. It was more your sort of run-of-the-mill point horror book, and that was disappointing because I preferred the genre it appeared to be at the start. Overall, I was a little disappointed, but it was an okay read. I felt that it was a bit predictable, and towards the end, I just wasn't able to suspend belief and believe in the things that were going on in the way that I think would have made it more enjoyable. Our Endless Numbered Days by Clare Fuller. Now I'd heard about this one as well on BookTube and was very excited about reading it. I have done a full review of this book, so I will leave a link below. If you're interested, then check it out. The basic story is that it's about a young girl and her father. Her father's a survivalist, really into the idea of running away to the woods and how he would survive. And then one day he takes her on a journey and tells her the rest of the world has been destroyed and they have to keep living out their lives in the woods, just the 2 of them. I really enjoyed this. It's my favourite book that I read this month. Gave it 4 stars. And to be honest, it stayed with me a bit more than I expected, and I think it's probably a 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this book and can't recommend it highly enough. Main positives for me were the survival theme, which has always been something that appeals to me. It was also quite refreshing to read something that wasn't a young adult book. It is definitely aimed at adults, which was nice. And generally it was just a really sort of intriguing mystery. It's told in sort of 2 halves. The present time where she's grown up a little bit and then the time when she's a child in the woods, and those 2 sort of go alongside each other to reveal bits of the mystery as you go, and I think it's the kind of story that stays with you when you finish reading it, and I really like this book. Book numero 3, which was To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper. Very famous book, so I shan't spend too long telling you what it's about, but basically it's about a girl called Scout living in the deep south in America, and her experiences cause issues of racism, inequality, and just how to treat other people, and it's a really, really enjoyable read. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Once again, thoroughly enjoyed it. Really easy read, which I wasn't expecting. Because it's a classic book, I often think of those as heavy going, but this isn't at all. It's just a really enjoyable, easy read, and you can take from it as much as you want. Always had an interest in that sort of crime channel thing, so when it went into the trial, that was something of personal interest to me, and so I really enjoyed that bit. Not so much the first half where it was setting up the background and just introducing characters. telling me lovely things about their day-to-day lives, but nothing meaty to get stuck into, whereas the second half is way better. It's a really emotive book. It deals with big, big issues, and that was really hard-hitting for me, and yeah, and it had quite an emotive ending, but that was a huge positive. So I really enjoyed this book. Don't know quite why it took me so blooming long to read it. The fourth book that I read this month was a book club book, which was How to Be a Woman by Moran. Again, I did a video of my book club books, which is this one and the next one, so I'll leave a link below if you're interested in hearing more about this. This was a good book. It was my first foray into reading feminist literature, which was an area that I was quite interested in. Enjoyed it, very funny, gave it 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Loved the way that it makes sort of real life experience, her just almost like an autobiography, her telling her story, but then taking it further and then exploring the sort of feminist issues on a deeper level. I thought that she did that really, really well. I thought it was thought-provoking, it was quite funny, although not sort of weeing your pants funny, but yeah, you'd sort of go, that kind of funny. I thought it gave a real sort of realistic view of feminism at a time where feminism is still sort of considered to be quite archaic and quite old-fashioned. It's more up-to-date and real, I suppose. If you're interested in getting into feminism stuff, then this is a good place to start, I think, because it's quite light-hearted, but makes you think about the issues, quite thought-provoking. The last book that I read this month nearly killed me, and that is Tender is the Night by Scott F. Fitzgerald. Again, I read it because it was a book club read, so check out my video if you're interested. This is what I consider classic literature to stereotypically be, because it is hard work, hard going, and just full of many words that seem unnecessary. It's about a guy called Dick who is married to a lady called Nicole, and they live this sort of extravagant lifestyle, and then this girl called Rosemary gets thrown into the picture, and she says she's in love with him, and then they seem to spend a lot of time together, and it's about their journey, the journey of all 3 of those characters in depth as they, over a significant number of years. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads because I was really disappointed by it, to be honest. Not my cup of tea. The first few pages were seriously hard going. I remember when I read the first few thinking, I'm not carrying on with this, it's too much. But it did get easier. It could have been a lot worse than it was. It sort of had ups and downs, hard bits and easy bits. Biggest issue for me was that I just found the language too hard going, and I just could not get into it. I felt like a lot of the time I was skim reading, not really getting into the meat of the story, but I was quite compelled by the characters, which was a surprise. I did want to finish the book, but I think for the sake of finishing it, rather than because I was interested in the characters. But the characters do have an interesting journey, so I can see how if I were into that style of literature, this would be quite an interesting story to discuss and talk about. But I'm not. So those are the five books I read in April. I am hoping to read a similar amount in May, but I do feel that I'm in a bit of a slump at the minute. I think that Tender is the Night has put me in a bad place and I'm not switched on to reading. So I'm hoping to get over that in May and maybe read a similar number of books. Fingers crossed. I'm aiming for 4 a month now. That is doable, woman, so get your act together. If you've read any of them, let me know. Would love to chat it out with you. If not, I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.